In this video, we're going to talk about our Illustrator Basics assignment. First thing that you'll need to do is find the date that the assignment is located on, and we are looking for the Illustrator Basics.ai for Adobe Illustrator file. So if you go ahead and click on that, what it's going to do is it's going to prompt you to download this. Google Drive does not support Illustrator files, meaning it doesn't give you a preview of the file. And so you're not going to be able to see what that template looks like, but you do need to download it into your Google Drive. Make sure you get it in your design, print, and publish folder, wherever that might be located for you. Once you have that open, here's what it's going to look like. But what we'll need to do is open up Illustrator. You'll need to go to File, Open, and then you need to find that Illustrator Basics file in your Design, Print, and Publish folder, wherever you've saved it. I do have a subfolder for Illustrator to keep all of my Illustrator files bundled. And since it is an Illustrator document, you're going to see this AI icon instead of a preview of what that image looks like we were used to in Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and select Illustrator Basics, and I'm going to go ahead and select Open. I'm getting that pop-up because I already have the file open. So this is what our template looks like. And the second thing that we need is our Illustrator Basics assignment sheet. I already have it open, so this is what it looks like. And the goal of this activity is just to familiarize and practice what we've learned with our basic shape tools and our pen tool in Adobe Illustrator. So again, right in the instructions, we're going to go ahead and open our Illustrator Basics file from the monthly preview. We're going to get it saved to your Google Drive. And then you'll need to open that through Illustrator. The first thing that it's asking us to do is in the Basic Shapes section, and we're going to match the shapes and sizes to the template in row 1. Make sure that you have no fill selected, or the template shapes will go ahead and disappear. So here's what I mean by that. Right now our colors for default fill and stroke are white and black. So if I come in and I grab my rectangle tool, right now I have a little pencil icon with a little "you can't do that" symbol. It's because I'm on my template layer. My template layer is locked, which is good. We want to make sure that we keep our template layer locked. But we have the second layer, our recreation layer. And this is where you're going to recreate everything that we do for this assignment. Now, once I'm selected on the recreation layer, notice it's not locked. Now that pencil icon that tells me that I can't do that goes away. Now, if I go ahead and create my square, let's say I start here and I create it, it looks like I did an okay job, but I can still see some of that gray of my template, all right? And it's disappearing because I have that white fill on there. If I turn that white fill off, notice my box does not match this square on my template exactly, all right? What you can do is you can recreate everything with a 1-point stroke, or you can take a look at the customized directions for each element in row 1, and you can set up the stroke weight. So my stroke weight is a 5-point black stroke for this. You can set up the stroke weight right offhand. That way you know if you're matching to the template appropriately or not. So I'm going to bump up my stroke weight to 5. And then down in the bottom left-hand corner, I do grade these at about 300%. I'm going to grab my navigator palette. All right. Now I can still see some of that gray, which isn't going to help me. So I'm going to grab my selection tool. I'm going to activate that square. And then I'm going to try to get that as close to size as possible. And what I need to do is hold the shift key down, but notice it's not matching up perfectly because I didn't hold the shift key down when I was creating my square. So the easiest way to go ahead and do this, in my opinion, is I'll grab my shape tool. I'm going to start right in the middle of the stroke, or as close to that stroke as possible. I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to hold the shift key down. Again, it might not be 100% perfect, but we're going to get it pretty darn close. And that is what my square is going to go ahead and look like. I'm going to move over. The next thing that we have to do is our hexagon, which is going to have a 4-point red stroke. So again, if you want to change your color, you totally can. But I'm going to go ahead and create my polygon, which is a square right now. By holding Shift, it's going to square the bottom of my polygon to the bottom of my document. You'll need to do that. And then to freeze the state of your object, you're going to hold down the space bar. So I'm going to kind of line that up. Right now, I am set up on a 5-point stroke, which is not what we want. My directions say I'm going to have a 4-point. So I might need to go ahead and come back in and resize my polygon. Again, holding that Shift key is going to square the bottom of my polygon nice and square to the bottom or top of my artboard, however you want to look at that. Next thing is our star. It has 8 points, black fill, and a 3-point blue stroke. So I'm going to set up my stroke weight for 3. And I'm going to go up to 8 points, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And again, I'm going to hold the Shift key down. I'm going to come line up my star as close as I can. My stroke weight is 3, moving right along. My triangle has a 2-point stroke. So I'm going to come back into my stroke palette. Shift, again, is going to square that to the center. I'm going to start in the center of my triangle. Match that, and then my last shape in row 1 is a perfect circle. All right, and get, oops, that all lined up. All right, I'm a little bit off there, so I'm gonna scale that down just a smidge. So when I go ahead and zoom out, now all of my shapes are the correct kind of size and location, but now what I need to do is pay attention to my instructions on my Google Doc, and I need to make sure that I'm following the instructions 2 through 6 to appropriately fill in and apply the correct stroke colors, fill colors, and stroke weights. So I'll let you explore that independently. The next thing that we're going to go ahead and take a look at is our path section. And our path section is going to review your pen tool. So it says, using the pen tool, we're going to match the paths to the template. Again, we want to make sure that no fill is selected, otherwise our paths are going to disappear. All right. So what we need to go ahead and do is find our pen tool first. I already have my no fill selected and set up, which is really nice. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit closer, maybe not 300%, but maybe 100 or like 150 so that we can see what we're doing a little bit easier. All right. So the way my pen tool works is, again, I'm going to click. I'm creating a curve. So I'm going to drag that control point and control handle straight up because my curve is going in a upward direction. Now notice Illustrator gives us a preview. If your preview is not there, you're not using the same version as me, but you're still going to come over to the end of that path and create an anchor point, and we're going to pull down with our control handle in the opposite direction. Now notice it's not matching perfectly. If I just press the escape key, it'll escape out of that pen tool command. And then I'm going to come in with my direct selection tool and I'm going to edit. I'm going to click on my control point, maybe. I think I missed. There we go. I'm going to click on my control point. My control point is what controls this left side of the curve because my control point's on the left side. So I'm just going to adjust that side, Likewise, my right control point will control that right side of the curve, so we can readjust that as needed. But that path should go ahead and match up with my template. The stroke weight here is 2. How do I know that? Because step number 2, it says create the paths using a 2-point solid black stroke and a no color fill. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply that right away, since I already know that's something that I'm going to need to do. Stroke weight is still 2. This time I'm going to start here. I'm going to click and drag to the left with my control handle because my curve is going to the left. My curve ends here. I'm going to click and drag in the opposite direction. Deselect by grabbing the selection tool, clicking once on the artboard. That bounding box and the Bezier line of that path will go away. Reactivate my pen tool, click and drag down because my curve is going down. Curve ends here, click and drag in the opposite direction. I have a little bit of gray here, so I'm going to come in and edit that with my direct selection tool. I'm going to move my control handle, grab my selection tool, and deselect. All right, so those are the easy ones. Now we're going to get a little bit more complicated with the next 2 paths. And I'm going to come back in with my pen tool, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit further just so you can see kind of what is happening for the entire path. So I'm going to start my curve just like I did with these single curves. My curve is going to end here. So I'm trying to get right on there as close as I can, being so zoomed out for y'all. And then I'm going to come back to this original anchor point. And what you're going to see is that V, which is convert anchor point. You're going to hold down the Alt key, and that Alt key, if you notice attached to my cursor, I have a new control point and a new control handle. And that new control point and new control handle that I just created is going to control this left part of my new curve. And what that does is it allows me to leave this curve alone because it's being controlled by this control handle and this control handle. So my curve ends here. I'm going to click and drag in the opposite direction. Again, you can see a little bit of gray. I'm going to come back and edit when I'm finished. That way I don't break my path. Come back to your control point. Come back to your anchor point. See the V, Alt key, click and drag in the direction of your curve. Find where that curve ends. Click and drag in the opposite direction. Come back to your anchor point. See the V, Alt key, click and drag in the direction of your curve, and then click and drag in the opposite direction. It's nice that Illustrator gives you an idea of, or a preview of where that Bezier line is going to go ahead and end up with the colored Bezier line that you're recreating. And you can see as I recreate, all of my sublayers are being stored in my layers palette. And that's because I have this little arrow here pointing down, which opens up like all of those sublayers. If I were to click on that arrow and it were to go sideways, you wouldn't see any of those. I like to keep them open sometimes, just if I need to go back and make quick edits or find something. That's always helpful. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom back in. And what we're going to notice is I didn't quite hit the templates. All right. I'm still at a 2-point stroke, but I need to come in with my direct selection tool. I need to reactivate some of these anchor points by clicking on them. Okay, so find an anchor point, click on it, and then that control point and control handle will go ahead and pop up. So I'm just going to make sure that my anchor points are where they need to be. This one's a little bit off, so I'm going to reactivate that one. And I'm literally just going to click and drag it to where it needs to be so that I can better match these templates. By clicking on the path, your control points and control handles will also pop up. So that is also an option. And notice that by clicking these control handles and control points, that just that curve is going ahead and being manipulated or modified. And that's because I pressed that Alt key. If you don't press the Alt key, all of the paths are going to go ahead and change because you didn't kind of lock the previous curve in place. All right, so those first 2 look okay. This anchor point, I might need to move just a smidge. So now I'm going to have to move that template All right, and we'll move that one over. I'm going to need to move this anchor point, which is going to modify some things for me. Okay, and again, it's not going to be 100% perfect, but we're going to get it pretty darn close. And then this control handle and control point, control that curve. All right, so now I'm happy with that. So our next path is going to go ahead and have an upward curve and a downward curve in all different types of directions. So the way that I like to go ahead and do this one, and it's kind of a little bit of a cheat, but it's going to help you visually of where one curve ends and one curve begins until we get used to things like this. So if you have your rulers on, if you don't, you go to View, Rulers. Right now I have my rulers on, so it says Hide Rulers, or you can do Control R, but you want to show your rulers. And if you click inside your ruler and drag down, we're going to create that guideline. And I'm going to drop that guideline right where that curve begins and ends. And then where that intersection takes place, we know that we need to put anchor points there. And you never want to put extra anchor points because anchor points actually create hard corners and curves are meant to be smooth. So we're looking for smooth transitions. And I'll show you what that looks like in this path here. So I'm going to click and drag in the direction of my curve. I'm going to come here where my next anchor point is going to be. I'm going to click and drag in the opposite direction. Now, my next curve is in the opposite direction of my first curve, all right? But I still need to come back to that anchor point. I still need to see the V, and I still need to press that Alt key. And again, that Alt key is going to allow me to click and drag a new control point and a new control handle to manipulate and modify only this curve. Remember, that locks this curve in place so that only those two control handles will move it. And then this control handle is going to manipulate just this one because I pressed that Alt key. So again, I'm going to click here. I'm going to drag in the opposite direction. See the V, Alt key, click and drag in your direction of your curve. Find where that curve ends. Click and drag in the opposite direction. Alt key. See the V, Option key, Alt key. It's an Option key on a Mac, which is what I'm used to, sorry. And in the opposite direction. Again, I'm done, so I'm going to deselect my path, and then we're going to zoom in, and you're going to notice, again, I haven't quite matched up perfectly because I was zoomed out so far. Just trying to get you guys to see things a little bit easier. So I'm going to go ahead and come back in with my direct selection tool. I'm going to do some editing real quick so that my Bezier lines are matching to that template as closely as possible. So we're going to move over. Those first two sections don't look too bad. Modify that just a little bit. Okay, and then I'm done with my guidelines, so I'm going to go to guides, and then I'm going to clear that guide because I don't really need it anymore. But notice I can't really tell where my anchor points are. I know there's an anchor point right there, and the reason why I can tell is because when we have our control handles, you want them to be in a perfectly straight line. So there's that little bump. You probably didn't notice it. But as we get better at recognizing these, you will be able to go ahead and notice those. But creating this straight line with our control handles, notice how this bottom control handle and control point go off to the left a little bit. If you click on that control handle and straighten out your control handles here, so they create more of a straight line, that bump or that curve kind of goes away a little bit. All right, so I just need to adjust. Oops, I missed my control point. I'm just going to adjust that a little bit. And I'm not having it so much on this side because look at my control handle lines. They're in a nice straight line. All right, so we want to make sure that those are nice and smoothed out. Again, I can click on my control or my anchor point, and then I can come in and create those control handles in more of a straight line so that we smooth out those anchor points that create those hard corners. All right, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit more, and the last one should be fairly easy. You're just going to grab your pen tool and follow. I'm going to call them mountains or zigzags. And you're just going to follow those. Again, these are all going to have a 2-point no fill. If I were to turn my fill color on and I would make a mistake like that, and then I would come up here and do that and that and that and that. It's going to look great and fabulous, and I can see template here, but why can't I see template here? So things like that, where I'm going to have you, when I grade these, select everything, and then if it doesn't show up as none, because all of them are supposed to have a none fill, then I know you did something wrong, and not all of them have that none fill. So when you turn off that fill color, you can see all of the mistakes that you have created for yourself. But that's okay, because I can just come back in with my direct selection tool. I can reactivate these anchor points. And remember, once they're active, I can go ahead and move those as needed. So that is how you go ahead and create all of your paths. What I'm going to go ahead and do now is swing back to our directions. And it says in the lower right-hand corner of our page, we're going to type in AI Basics by your name, first and last. Make it styled for 21-point papyrus. Black is going to be our color and not in all caps. So I need AI Basics by my name. So I'm going to grab my type tool. I'm going to click once in the lower right-hand corner. I'm going to type in AI for Adobe Illustrator, Basics by Spurza. I'm going to highlight that text, and in my character palette, I'm looking for papyrus. So I'm just going to click on the text typeface name, and I'm going to type in PAP. Papyrus should pop up. 21-point, regular. My color of that typeface is black. And then I'm just going to grab my selection tool, and I want to make sure that it's fitting within like a 1/2-inch border of your artboard. So I'll drop a guideline, and that is because, oops, dropped a guideline in the wrong spot. There we go. And that's because this 1/2-inch border is called a gutter. And the gutter is where the printing margins typically cut off. So if it were outside into the gutter in this 1/2-inch border around your document, it wouldn't print. I know we're not printing, but better safe than sorry moving forward. The only thing that I did not do that, again, you should be doing is filling in the colors of your fill, the appropriate stroke weights, and the appropriate stroke colors of basic shapes. So again, I told you that you're doing that independently. We should be able to do that following the instructions in our basic shape section 2 through 6. Once you are finished, you're going to save your work and you're going to fill out the student grade column, and then I will come to your computer and grade it on the page. I will go ahead and put the screenshot of the finished final product right below your Paths tool directions. And then on page 2, I will provide you the rubric with the student grade and the teacher grade columns.